Yeah.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents. This is Brothers of the Serpent podcast, and we are coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, where we are nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau. And this week we have on a special guest, Marc Young. You're in Australia right now, Marc?
Correct, yeah.
All right. From the other side of the planet, upside down land, Marc is joining us.
Welcome, bro.
Welcome.
Thank you, guys. It's good to be here.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. So Kyle was telling me before the show that he was like, let's get Marc on and talk about the Khafre data.
Yeah.
Now, we had discussed this in Egypt with Ben like maybe a week after it came out or something. But obviously a lot more things have happened then. But Marc knows more about it than we do. And his specialty, you're like geophysical archaeology. What was it that you said?
Yeah, so I wouldn't really call it my specialty, but I have been trained in archaeological geophysics and remote
Okay.
sensing applications in archaeology. So it's kind of, I know a little bit.
He knows a little bit, which is way more than us.
Yeah. Yeah. Way better than the speculation camp over here.
Yeah. So the first question I guess I would have is, what is the technology that's supposed to be that was used for this, and how does it work? Like, that's the question.
Yeah, so a lot of people and the debunkers out there are saying, oh, you can't do all this with SIR data, which is synthetic aperture radar, and it comes from satellites. But and they're right. You can't do this with traditional SIR, but that's not what the people are using. It's not what the scientists are using. So Dr. Filippo Biondi has developed a new technology based on SIR. It incorporates Doppler tomography, and it basically extracts seismic data from satellite images. And it does that basically by multiple passes. They're using hundreds of images of the same area, and because SIR is very sensitive, it's down to like a centimeter resolution in some cases. And so with multiple images over time, you can detect the tiny movements of the landscape, and you can extract seismic data from that. At least that's the claim.
So that's incredible. So there's like, go ahead.
So it's called, the original technology called synthetic aperture radar, it's not actually radar, it's photographs, or is it actually a kind of radar?
So they use radar to take high resolution elevation data. So it is a radar. It's not a traditional satellite that's taking photos of things, but it's making photos out of radar data, basically.
Okay. So they're using
elevation data.
It's that same process, but like hundreds of photos over time throughout the course of the satellite's orbit over the target area. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Now
some of the satellites I was hearing in an interview, some of the satellites they use are actually geosynchronous, so they stay in the same spot relative to the Earth as it turns.
Roughly.
So those are the kind of satellites that are really good for this, because they don't move from their location, basically.
Yeah.
So the Doppler part of it is this is what allows them to get more of like a three-dimensional image. Is that true? Because it's showing you like the change in rate of the radar as the satellite is moving past the landscape.
Yep, exactly. So as the satellite moves over, it's sending down radar. And by the time that radar bounces back, the satellite's not in the same location. So there's an internal correction within the satellite to say it corrects it by that much, by how far it's moved. So they can actually use that to gain 3D images.
Oh, and then so then it's automatically doing this correction, but if there's still some little error, then that's a movement. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the idea.
Wow, that's really cool. So has it been shown that is actual seismic data? I mean, what if it's some other error that's being recorded?
Well, that's a good question. It depends who you ask. If you ask Dr. Filippo Biondi, he'll tell you absolutely. He
Okay.
actually developed the technology using it on bridges. And obviously, as you drive a car across a bridge, it vibrates, and
Yeah.
and his technology would see the areas of the highest vibration, and that were expected within the engineering uh, specifications.
Okay.
So then he transitioned to mapping, trying to reconstruct underground structures. Um, and on his website, he's got a few examples. And then obviously they used it in the Khufu pyramid, and they published that in 2022 in a remote sensing journal. And the latest one hasn't been published anywhere in terms of journals, but and
Is
I'm
there a
sure it
paper
won't
on?
these days. I'm sure it
Yeah.
won't because they've come out with it in the media first, and that so it'll never see the light of day in a peer-reviewed journal, I wouldn't think. And I mean, unless the technology is so um, irrefutable that they can't just suppress it. So
Yeah.
So have you looked at the examples that he's shown on his website? What do you think about those? And like they basically like controls where it's a known structure, a known underground structure, and he's checking it with this data. What do you think about
yeah,
those?
I haven't delved too deeply into them, but from what I've seen, they seem legitimate. And obviously, you can never know because if you know what the structure is underground, you can kind of tweak your results to reflect that. But
Yeah.
and the only way you could prove it is if there's like secret chambers in there that it picks up and stuff like that that aren't known to the public. So
And then to enter the secret
obviously,
chamber. Yeah.
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 Obviously, it needs extensive testing in the public domain. They need to open source their methods and data, and they've said they're open to doing that. So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
That kind of provides like an incentive for scanning something that might have secret chambers. And then you're like, check it out. So maybe if the chambers are found, then his new method is basically proven successful.
Yeah,
Like if his only option was to do these controls where the data could be manipulated, I guess that would be the only other option. Was like, well,
Yeah.
let's scan the pyramid then, and we'll find something, and and then hopefully people will go there. I
Yeah.
guess I don't know.
That's an interesting point. Like Mark's saying, like you have to do a control, but then the control can be because it's known. Everybody can be just like, well, you already knew what it looked like. Right. And so
yeah,
that's funny because when we were in Egypt, we're saying like, why don't they do a control scan of something known? And he's like, well, yeah, but then you'd come out with the data and everybody's like, whatever, it still doesn't work. You just knew what it looked like
yeah.
already.
It's like an unfalsifiable thing. If you show it to someone, they'll say, "Oh, they'll still deny it." So yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Like so really scanning the pyramid was his only option.
But it was, well, yeah. And okay.
So that if he found a new chamber, we could go down there, or somebody could, I don't know, try to get to it and confirm whether or not it's there.
Well, okay. So I specifically thought of Mammoth Cave because it's known that there's hundreds of miles of caverns in Mammoth Cave, but not everyone knows how to get to all of them. So if he got a scan of that and built a map and then showed like, here's a place that no one has been, that is not on any of the existing exploration maps, but here's where you should be able to get to it. And then somebody can go down there and get in and see, I mean, like this would be one way to do it. And there are people that are constantly exploring Mammoth Cave, for example. So you send some spelunkers down there, like all you have to do is tell a spelunker, I found a new passageway in a cave, and they'll go.
They're
Yep.
speleologists.
Speleologists. Yeah, well, and Ben was saying like let's do, or somebody, I said World War II bunkers, whatever, like you scan something that where we know it exists, but it might have closed off chambers because it's been bombed or whatever. Where are the missing trains?
I
whatever.
mean, even the underground cities in Cappadocia, like that would be a good use of it.
Oh,
because they
yeah.
go down quite deep. I mean, the deeper the better, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
obviously, in the pyramid scan they go down 650 meters or something like that.
Yeah.
So if it's only a shallow structure, then there's still doubt. But if they penetrate a nice deep one,
Right.
they've used it on mountain laboratories, like laboratories that are in a mountain,
Mm.
and they've successfully reconstructed it. But then people are like, "Oh, it's in a mountain, so you can come in from the side as well." So there's no pleasing some people really. You need to
Of
go
course.
like deep down, like the Doomsday bunkers that nobody
Yeah.
knows about, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean the looking at the mountain from the side with a satellite. I mean, really, does the mountain have a side to a satellite? Almost nothing. You
Well,
know
we
what
were
I'm
just
saying?
talking about how it.
That's what I'm saying. Like all of the landscape has a side, even the flat,
Yeah.
like desert
You
valleys.
can
They
come in
have
from the
sides.
side. It's not as deep because you're coming in from the side.
They have sides when you're a satellite going around a planet.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, the other possibility is like, I mean, I don't know. I think that the scanning the pyramid was like PR genius,
Yeah,
but
that's true.
scientifically speaking, like it's almost impossible to get this kind of exploration done in Egypt. So
Yeah.
it's never going to
It
be
was
verified
funny.
ever.
When it came out, Zahir was like, "Oh, we didn't get permissions for this," and I was
Yeah.
watching your episode with Ben.
I
You
did
were
not give
laughing
you
about that
permission.
because
Yeah.
you don't need permission for satellite data, mate. And I've
Yeah.
heard him
I did not.
say, I- I've
Yeah.
heard him a quote from him that was like, "Oh, I've never learned anything from any sort of technology or anything like that. It's
Right.
all
Exactly. He doesn't believe in
uh,
radar.
yeah, exactly. That's the famous quote that Ben likes to play. I don't believe in
Yeah.
radar."
Yeah. Especially not synthetic aperture radar. But yeah, it's like, yeah, they don't have permissions. Like, I'm sorry, bro, but people don't need permissions to look at Egypt from space. It's, but that's how they think in Egypt. The entire mindset around all the archaeological sites is what permissions do you have?
Yeah, yeah,
Whether you're a tourist or an archaeologist or a filmmaker, it's all about your permissions. And so their first response is, he didn't have permission to do this.
yep, yep, yep. And there's an interview that George just put out with Biondi and Armando May with Randall, who tagged along in the as well. And in there, they were talking about, well, they asked Filippo how he got into the field and why he chose the pyramid. And apparently, Armando May was his academic supervisor, and he's really interested in all that stuff. And that's how they chose the pyramid for this.
Hmm.
I
Well,
find
it's
it
like I
strange
said.
that a non-satellite expert would be supervising a satellite expert, but
Yeah.
I don't know how it works over in Italy.
That also adds a little bit of bias, you know, like in my opinion, there's a little bit of doubt because it's like, oh man, wouldn't it be amazing if there was like huge chambers and structures under there? So it kind of like I can understand like from an enthusiast standpoint that like, yeah, that's what you want. Like that's what we all want.
Well, you know, what this kind of reminded me of also was, I don't know if you guys have heard of Klaus Dona.
Nope.
This guy's made some wild claims over the years, like really crazy ancient alien, you know, interesting, but just
The Earth is banana shaped.
craziness claims. And one of his claims, and this was years ago, I mean, I don't know how long ago, 10 years more, was that he had a friend who had a technology that could look through the Earth like it was transparent, and that they had used it to look.
I was hearing about this kind of thing a few years ago, and and I'm like, because I knew about geophysics and all that, I'm like, that's not possible. Like, I dismissed it completely at the time.
Yeah.
And now it's come out in the public, and I mean, it seems legitimate to me. Like,
you know what Klaus said?
It really could be something.
You know what Klaus said at the time? That his friend mounted it on a helicopter. That he flew a helicopter because he had to be way up high, and he took a bunch of images, and then he was able to use them to look through the planet.
I do remember this.
And he said that they were looking at Easter Island, and that some of those Moai statues had big chambers deep beneath them, and that they were effectively like headstones, graves. He thought they were tombs. And so I saw this stuff coming out, and I'm like, oh my God, was Klaus actually right? Did he have some like
That-
crazy inventor buddy that invented one of these and put it on a helicopter?
It sounds a little bit different. I don't know
Yeah,
if
it
you can do
does.
this from a helicopter.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you need the precision of the satellite's orbit, but it was still it just reminded me of that. So
yeah, no, I remember something about that. Yeah, and at the time I'm like, no, that's not possible at all.
Yeah, it's not possible. Yeah. Yep. But yeah, okay. So what are some other good sites? Like I thought of Mammoth Cave, you know, because there are hundreds of miles of caverns.
Well, now I'm thinking like send it to Easter Island, bro.
Yeah.
Take some pictures of Easter Island. Let's see what's going on there.
Yeah.
This guy claimed there were chambers under.
It'd be nice to look for the labyrinth. Is it the Hawara labyrinth or something?
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, that would be great.
However, that is not deep, and you said we need something that's deep. Hawara is
well, you
10,
never know.
15 meters. Yeah, well, that's true.
You could go pretty deep.
You only need something that's deep to confirm their other findings of like the deep structures under the pyramid. But if they can find shallow findings that are also accurate, that's good enough.
Yeah,
at least to prove that they.
I'm not certain, but I'm pretty sure they've done GPR scans and they've located the labyrinth. It's just full of water.
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
So it would be good to test that against the GPR because that's how geophysics should work. You use multiple methods. You don't just use one and rely on that exclusively. So
yeah, that's a good point. They could test their data against the existing GPR data. And they should scan the Sphinx enclosure.
Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't. They might already have.
Maybe they have. Yeah, maybe they have. I mean, shit. If you're looking at the pyramid, it's probably in the pictures.
I mean, if you have access to satellites, just fucking turn them on all the time. So what about you had mentioned this like different natural features in the rock, and we've been to Giza multiple times, and we've been down deep in the bedrock there, like in the Osiris shaft, which is what 150 feet, and then the descending passageway under the Great Pyramid and the subterranean chamber and all that, and the bedrock is fairly homogeneous. It's very solid. It's very good bedrock. You don't, like, for example, in the descending passageway under the pyramid, you don't notice a lot of changes in the quality of the bedrock. So it seems very consistent. It's the same way in the Osiris shaft, but there are minute changes a little bit. Like you'll see where they, in the Osiris shaft, for example, where they choose to carve out a room, there's like a particularly dense layer that they punch through first, and then they carve out a big room, and that layer acts as a ceiling.
Yeah.
So that takes place a couple of times, as you go down the 150 feet descent into the Osiris shaft. But under the Great Pyramid, there are fissures that are running steeply in the rock, and some of them have pretty large cavities for just a crack in the rock, and there's full of iron oxide. Got all this red material flaking off, and I mean one of them, and one of them's a crack. I mean, it goes up in there. You could, I don't know, who knows how big some of the voids are throughout that entire fissure in that bedrock. And then when you're walking around on the surface around the pyramids, there are big cracks that have clearly been sort of modified, and then big tile stones have been put over them. So you'll have like a series of tile stones, and then the tile stones will stop, and you'll see that it's a crack that just continuously runs off and then is buried in sand somewhere.
Interesting.
So there are a lot of these types of features, and is it possible that that's what they're seeing underneath there is a series of cracks and natural openings?
I would be very surprised. Obviously, what you're talking about, the horizontal layers, that's completely expected within a limestone plateau because it's formed underwater and it recedes and comes back up over time. And so it's like lake valves, how they're really thin layers. It's basically like a macro version of that over millions of years, and then that's how limestone plateaus are formed. So you'd expect hard layers interspersed with softer layers.
Right.
But
there are
vertical layers.
Yeah.
I really don't think. I mean, I'm not a geologist, obviously. I have some geology training, but I can't think of any process that would cause completely vertical cracks like that. Usually, faults and fractures are diagonal,
Right.
and obviously
That's
they
what
can
I've
get
seen.
quite steep, but not vertical like that. I wouldn't think, and not
Yeah.
consistently vertical all the way through like that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's what we've seen under the like down in the shafts and stuff is the fissures are diagonal essentially.
Yeah.
70
Yeah.
degrees,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't go straight up. And then but then there are these discontinuities running along the surface that apparently like they penetrate through the layers, but they probably don't go straight down, right? That's the
Yeah.
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 so
And there was one interesting interpretation that I saw. If you look at the raw geophysical data, it looks like it could be a series of chambers going down. Have you seen the image that compares it to the Osiris shaft?
Let me pull up the article here. Just give me a minute. I don't think I have.
I don't think it's in any of the main articles. I can share my screen real quick.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, I was going to say, so just real quick to close out this natural fissures discussion. You think, I mean, just from your opinion, you can basically consider that these are not like the data that they're seeing is not due to natural fissures. Is that basically what you're saying?
I wouldn't say that
confident?
conclusively, but it's very low chance, I would say.
High level of confidence.
Yeah.
But what about natural caverns, like actual caves?
So you guys are familiar with karst morphology and all that in limestone karst. I mean, theoretically, it might be. I mean, all along the Yucatan, there's all these cenotes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, they could be really deep cenotes, but I
Yeah,
don't know why you'd build a
weird.
pyramid on top of a bunch of cenotes, right?
This is the other thing I want to address as you're pulling this up. I hear this a lot from people saying, well, you got to have a foundation like people do, piers underneath and pylons and this and that. So of course they're going to have like some really deep foundation. And I'm like, no, the bedrock.
You build on the bedrock
is the foundation. Yeah. You don't need to dig bedrock out and hollow it out. That weakens the foundation, people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moving
Can you
on.
see this?
Yes.
Yeah. So you see, you compare the circles there, and it almost looks like it could be a series of chambers going down, linked with just shafts.
I see that.
It does, yeah. Okay.
And so, I mean, that's more reasonable than the 3D renderings they've produced of just massive shafts, like elevator shafts going down.
So this the green area over here is like
one
basically
of those pylons.
You're illustrating one of those big pylons, yeah. And so it looks like it has multiple chambers. Yeah. See, this is what we would see in the Osiris shaft, which is illustrated there.
Yeah,
and they're square.
They're square chambers, not round, and they don't have spiral staircases around them, folks. This is not the labyrinth.
I can guarantee the spiral staircases are wishful thinking. There's no way to produce those out of the data they got. Just no way.
I think
they're not even diagonal. They're straight like this all the way down. So
I don't know, bro. There's a huge argument about whether spirals are diagonal or horizontal in Egypt.
That's a good point. That is a good point.
This is true.
But I would say that it's those horizontal lines might be related to the bedrock layers. Because those are horizontal.
Yeah. Yep, I'd agree with that.
But yeah, this makes a lot more sense. This a room, and then you cut down, and then you hit another nice hard layer, and then you cut a room under it, then you cut a shaft down. They do this over and over again. We see it all over the place in Egypt.
Yeah.
This looks much more like constructions we've actually been in, whether it's like Valley of the Kings or beneath the pyramids. Yeah.
Or just some of the open shafts all over the Giza Plateau or in Saqqara.
Yeah.
They look like that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So
now, what about the water? How does
I was about to bring that up because that's a major point of contention for a lot of people. I've seen people saying, "Oh, will they be full of water?" And it's like, yeah they would be.
Yeah.
They absolutely would be.
They would be, but it's a lower density than the rock. So the Doppler, the radar data should pick it up,
Yes.
right?
Exactly. The sound waves travel through it differently. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the main argument with the water is why would they dig these things that are going to fill with water, and wouldn't it already have been? Wouldn't they have been digging underwater at the time they were making it? And they probably
Absolutely,
would have been.
yeah.
So that is a major consideration.
Giza. Yeah, it's. I mean, you go 150 feet down, and you're at the water table. Like, you're in the water.
That's also
shaft.
below the bottoms of the pyramids.
It is, but it's also due to the fact that there's a dam there, because there in the past there would be a flood season and a dry season, so that water table would go up and down. So there would be periods when you could dig even deeper, and I wouldn't be surprised if there are deeper tunnels. At the bottom of that Osiris shaft somewhere.
Yeah.
That are just full of sediment and
There's
water.
At least one that goes off into the, like, horizontally into the rock past that box, but it's just full of water and mud. You can't.
You know, next time we go there, bro,
need to
bring in my waders.
I know. Just need to slog through that shit. Yeah.
Fall down
the shaft.
Obviously, the construction of the dam has flooded a lot of structures that were built or dug when there wasn't groundwater there, and the same could be true here. Obviously, it's a much grander scale, 600 meters down. You're going to hit the water table at some point, right?
Yeah.
What's that in American? 600 meters.
What's that?
A lot. I can
give it to me in freedom units.
Freedom units. Let me look it up.
Almost 2,000 feet.
Yeah. Okay. Jeez.
Yeah.
That's serious.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of I mean, I don't know. That's too much I mean, I'd love to see it, but it just seems like that's too far. Where is there a precedent for this? Like, anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, not in Egypt, I wouldn't think, but I'm sure there are Doomsday bunkers out there that go kilometers underground. In fact, I know they are. So,
yeah.
And whether that's
true.
Adding in the height of a mountain into that, I don't know. But
and I think the argument could be made that if that's what it is, if it exists, that it's some kind of doomsday bunker. It's just a very old one.
Yeah.
It's like the last doomsday.
And without getting too crazy into the realm of impossibility, like if there was no Mediterranean Sea, for example, when this was built, they'd be able to go down quite a bit. And we know there was no Mediterranean Sea 5 million years ago.
Wow, that's a long time.
Before 5 million years ago. So about 5 million years ago, there was the Zanclean flood, which is a mega flood that's like 100 times bigger than the largest mega flood in North America. And that flooded the Mediterranean Sea.
That happened 5 million. Wow.
Yeah, about 5 million. Yeah. And Randall actually just released an episode of his podcast after talking with the two guys on the Foxhole with George. He released a podcast about the geology of the area and all that stuff. And he talked about the Zanclean flood. I think he got a bit off topic, as Randall does.
Yeah.
He kind
That's
of
classic Randall.
Yeah. So he didn't quite get to the point by the end of the podcast, but who knows? In the next couple of episodes, he might.
That's clear. That's great. Yeah, I mean, 5 million years. That's too far, in my opinion.
It is too far. It is.
It doesn't have to be, but like,
if it was 5 million years, it would have to be aliens, right? And no one really wants to say that.
Right. Aliens, or there was some other intelligent
being whatever it is,
on Earth, like
an
Earthling
Earth being
that went extinct. Yeah. That was not
I'm
Homo
not
sapiens.
saying I believe that at all, but I'm just throwing around hypotheticals here.
Yeah. Some early Pleistocene.
Well, the full hypothetical could be simply that, like, if let's say that this structure does exist, if it was made purposefully, like if it's not a natural cave, because I could totally see the the possibility of some kind of strange geological formation that makes this natural whatever system going down in there. It's possible. I don't think it's probable, but if they cut way down in there and had the technology to do that type of work, then they could possibly run pumps and keep water out of it while they did whatever they were doing for whatever purpose they were doing.
Yeah.
And then maybe they finished that and the place, this is like before all the pyramids, perhaps it isn't even connected to the pyramids necessarily, but that's one of the things that might make it a sacred site for people that later came that were like, this is a place of the gods. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just saying like that type of idea fits like what I think we actually see, and that there's plenty of evidence for that there were people that came before that had some ability to do something amazing, and people come and find that site and they revere it for thousands of years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, if
you
there
guys seen
is a
Metatron
structure,
Sorry to
Metatron?
interrupt. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
So he's a YouTuber. He jumped on the bandwagon about this stuff early, and he's very good. He's very fair to both sides. He's like Dan, what used to be before the scientists started piling on him. And he's a historian of Rome and Greece and stuff. And he pointed out that the Romans and the Greeks had ways of removing water from their mines when they started to flood. So, I mean, if the Greeks and stuff could do it, 1,000, 2,000 years ago,
you could possibly use the current of the Nile as a pump, you know, just to pull the water out of it.
That brings up another important point, right? Because the groundwater would presumably come from the Nile, most dominantly, I would say, and or the Mediterranean. But do you guys know those ancient maps that show the Nile running out to the west?
Yeah, there's a branch that runs in that direction. That's what you mean?
Yeah.
What was it called?
I don't know the names of these things.
And it's confirmed. I mean, if you look at the satellite data, you can see a massive extinct river going out that way. So if the Nile did used to flow out that way when this thing was built, then that might reduce the groundwater. I haven't looked into that at all, but just a thought I had.
That's cool. Yeah, I have to look at that.
Sorry to interrupt you, but do you remember what you were saying?
It's also possible.
I forgot already, bro.
Some of the
Ain't worried about it.
There are known aquifers, at least that we've heard that have been mentioned while we were out there. Like for example, with the Osirian. The Osirian is built directly over top of like surface access to a known aquifer whose source is not the Nile. The aquifer's source is farther out into the desert. So its water level is not necessarily affected by the Nile level, right? But Nile water can get on top of it, I guess, in the rock layers. So
it's deeper.
Building of the dam has affected the Osirian, but if the Osirian is a well whose source was to access a spring from that deep aquifer, that water is not coming from the Nile. And the plateau is lifted way up above the Nile level. You know, like Yousef always points out, because like we get up there by the pyramids and, you know, inevitably somebody asks about floods and water damage. And then Yousef always just turns and points to Cairo, which is way down below us when you're up there on the plateau. It's, you know, you're up pretty high. And he just points out like what you'd be talking about a big flood, any water that got way up here. So I would like to know like how deep you could actually dig from the level of the pyramids. How far down would that water table be? And, you know, they're not always flat. Like if the quality of the rock is similar to what for example, the descending passage is going through, that rock is it's not porous. It's not going to carry a lot of water. Right?
Yeah, and that's how confined aquifers work, right? That's how springs that shoot out of the surface work. Because it can't permeate upwards, and then when a crack forms, it can flow out of there. And there's a lot of hydraulic head there, and that's why they can fountain out sometimes.
Exactly.
But there is another aspect to this as well. So everyone's talking about, oh, wouldn't it be flooded and all this stuff? But what if that's the purpose? What if they could be
the purpose was to get to the water? Yeah.
They could be wells.
Yeah.
It's a lot of effort to dig a well that deep, obviously.
Yeah.
And why would you need multiple of them? But then there's also, I'm not a power plant guy at all. I'm not a pyramid power guy at all. But I
Okay.
believe there's a theory of hydroelectric pyramid.
Maybe
So
there is. Yeah.
I don't know how it would work, but if the idea is that they're generating electricity from hydroelectric power, then it would make sense to have
A water source. Yeah.
I think they
large
were
water
cooling
source below
wells. They were cooling wells for radioactive
cooling towers.
materials.
Yeah.
These big rods just go down,
Yeah.
make steam. Easy, bro. No, I don't know. I think that what they might be for and all of that is a little bit, for me, it's beyond what I need to think about at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand. You know what I'm saying? Like, I love it. It's great to try to come up why, but I'm still stuck
let's
on like,
confirm what
does
they
this
are,
really
or
exist?
if they're even there first. Yeah, before we get off into all this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean,
So
in that Forbidden Frontier episode, I said that it could be noise in the data, right? And from what I've seen since then, I really don't think so, because
okay.
Biondi had an interview with Jay Anderson, and in that interview he said, at first they thought it was noise. They're like, well, that's kind of weird. But then they checked it and checked it and checked it again over time, and they always got the same result. It didn't matter what they used or what they did to change it. They always got that result. And typically in geophysics, when that happens, it means there's something there.
That's cool. It looks to me like those. Now, I haven't seen. They have 3-dimensional data, but of course the pictures we see are 2D. You know, they're just picking one slice to kind of show you. But it looks like an echo. It almost looks like you've got maybe one structure and somehow it's being echoed all around under the base of the pyramid.
I think there's
Do you think
definitely
that's
some
possible?
potential for echo there, but it wouldn't just be one. It would be 3 or 4 that are echoing as well. Like,
Okay, so
I pointed
maybe
out in
there's-
that Forbidden Frontier episode, the one in the middle of that image. Let's see if I can pull it up here. Okay.
Well, I really love the idea that like the data is good. You know, the interpretation is the problem.
Yeah.
And then of course confirmation is an issue.
The data is telling us something.
Yeah. Okay.
And we have to figure out how to find out what that something is.
Can you see my mouse at all?
Yeah.
Yep. No, I'm looking at
Okay,
my
so-
mouse.
No, yeah.
Okay. So the one just off to the left of center,
Okay.
with
Yeah.
like the red chunk near the top.
Red. Yep. Red chunk near the top.
Yeah, that one would probably be real, and the ones either side of it could be echoes. And
Mm.
off the right,
Oh, yeah,
right
yeah.
of center, that
Yeah.
one there is probably real.
With a
And
lot of
the
red
one
in
to
it.
the right of that, yeah, with a lot of red, and the one to the right of that's probably real. And the one on the far right of the image that's half cut off, that's probably real as well. And the same on the
But what
other
is
side
the-
of the image.
What is the color coding here? Like what are these
It
colors?
would be seismic resistivity. It would be differentiating different.
So the speed
materials
that
the
the
seismic
waves
wave
are
is passing. Yeah,
the speed that the waves are passing through. Okay. Yeah.
correct. Yeah.
One
So
question
I mean,
that
there's definitely potential for some of them to be noise, but definitely not all of them.
the question that occurred to me immediately was like, why did they only show us what was immediately under the pyramid? Why not give us like, here's like, you know, half a kilometer on either side of the pyramid?
Yeah, that would be interesting to see. I
Yeah,
agree with you
it's-
there.
It's blank.
I felt like it was a little bit too on the nose, like, oh, we just scanned the pyramid. And then they talk about how the pyramid is like, I don't know if this was a reporter or whatever, a press release, but it was like the pyramid, it basically becomes like a crystal. And I'm like, that's too much. You're appealing to the
no.
crystal hippies by saying that. And they know
Well,
it.
Yeah, I mean, that could be like a media spin, because they might have. Obviously, the guys are Italian, right? And they do speak relatively good English, but there is some that's lost in translation still.
Of
And
course, gotta
so
give them that.
he could have been talking about the seismic resonance that they use to build it, and then the media guy goes, "Oh, the crystal resonance and all this stuff." So
Of course, yeah. That's what I'm
yeah,
saying. It's
so
just the press release was just
Yeah, I mean, because in the abstract, what they actually say is Khufu becomes transparent when observed in the micromovement domain. They don't say anything about crystals.
okay.
yeah,
The some of the problems I had with this original paper, this 2022 paper, was, I mean, there were some just errors that I thought, like they say that the pyramid is made of granite.
yeah.
know,
That is
like,
that is a major oversight, and that
Yeah, and then they said
shouldn't
that
have
it's
happened.
basically, yeah, and then they say it's basically built on sand, and that's also not true. It's
Nope.
on a bedrock footprint. You know,
Yeah,
The bedrock is part of the pyramid itself.
Yeah.
Like the bedrock literally goes up the sides of the pyramid. They cut the bedrock into the shape of the pyramid and added more layers on top. Like it's
So now you don't want to like get a fallacy of composition in here and say, well, because you got this wrong, everything else you say is wrong. But it's I thought this was a major oversight,
yeah,
and it made me skeptical.
that's a good point. yeah.
definitely. And you
What
can
are we
see that
looking
again
at?
in this image here. It's from the same thing. I don't know the exact scale here, but it almost looks like that little triangle right at the top in the middle could be the pyramid, and then like the much larger scale here.
Yeah,
But I mean, it could be the same image that we were looking at before, just with a different rendering.
that looks more
But
like the ones that I had seen. That picture.
This
yeah,
this this is interesting. Now let's talk about vertical echoes. I
yeah,
feel like this bottom part and the top part is almost it just
It kind of is mirroring.
yes, it's a bit of a mirror image,
Yeah.
a little bit. I
potentially.
mean, not
I don't know
exactly.
too much about vertical echoes. Obviously, the technology is completely novel, so I don't know how much that would affect it.
Yeah, me either. I'm just looking at. I feel like the guy in the. You're like my psychiatrist, and I'm like, well,
Oh, that's
this looks like spiral staircases down huge shafts under a pyramid. Oh.
And you can see like the really high density one there in the middle.
Yeah,
This could be like a depth issue as well, a depth of field issue. Like this one could be really close to us, whereas the other ones that are much more muted, that look like they could be noise, could be further away from us.
further away. Yeah, yeah, gotcha. Yeah, again, we're looking at a slice of a 3D
Yeah.
rent. You know, basically
Yes.
a data set that is actually three-dimensional in nature, and we're just looking at one slice of it from the side.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, until they release
Have you
all
ever
their
had?
data, like they've said they will, it's going to be mostly skeptical,
It
speculative
just
for
reminds
a
me of
while.
like the sonograms, you know, like you guys, probably haven't. I know y'all haven't experienced this yet, but your wife comes to you with the sonogram, like, look at the baby, and you're like,
Yeah. Yeah.
are you sure?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is. It
Yeah.
is. That's part of the issue when you're looking at it three dimensionally, and I've actually seen this, obviously with the sonogram, just going on with this metaphor. When they're moving the sensor back and forth or at angles around the area, and you're watching that imaging as it passes through all of the structures, you can build with your brain an image of the 3D. You can see it.
Yeah.
And then when they stop and take a picture, you recognize it as this cross section, but you've seen it's been illustrated to you that there's a three-dimensional image there, and you're like, oh yeah, that's the eye, this is the nose, and all this stuff, and nobody else can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And that's a great point. These guys would have seen the 3D
yes,
renderings, while we've only seen the 2D. So
Yeah.
we can only speculate. They obviously know a lot more about it all than we do because they were there throughout the whole process. So
scientific papers need to move into the modern age and have videos, right?
Yeah.
Gotta have videos.
Yep.
Show me the video of you moving throughout that 3D image, or give me the whole thing and let us spin it around in Blender.
Yep.
Give us an STL of the heat map.
Yep.
Or whatever.
Yep. And they've said that they're going to open source all their data, so I'm looking forward to when they do, because that's going to be very interesting to look through.
But what about the process?
So obviously you can't reveal, if it's proprietary technology, they're not going to be able to reveal too much. But that's a problem in itself, right? Because in order for others and third parties to verify, they need access to it. And maybe they can do that through NDAs. They can bring them into the lab and show them everything, show them the whole process, and they can say, yes, this is good, or no, it's bad. And I mean, obviously, in an ideal world, it wouldn't be proprietary. Everyone would have access. But a technology like this, if it is legit, is absolutely revolutionary, and the guy's going to make billions off of it. So
the fact that he was doing stuff with bridges makes me think military.
Well, absolutely. There's
contract.
all sorts of intelligence.
You know what I'm saying? Oh yeah, we were scanning bridges. Like, why were you scanning bridges, bro? Like, that's straight up DoD thing. Like, show me where all their access is. So it could be that his hands are tied on that aspect.
Yeah. And I mean, if you were to open source it, and Joe Public could just go and look at secret military bases 2 kilometers under the ground, that's also a problem.
That is a big problem. I also have to try to, I would just say, like, I understand a little bit about this. Like, well, we're going to release the data. We're going to give the data out in the future.
Yeah.
Why not now is what everybody wants to know. And like, I know a little bit about that because, you know, with the Artifact Foundation, with the Artifact, the vase scan stuff, like these guys are trying to get the analysis right, you know, and it's like, well, we will release it all, but we're trying to do the work first and have something to present to the public where the data is understandable.
Yeah.
And then once they do that, then it can all be released at once, and other people can analyze it and publish on it.
On social media about drama behind the scenes, and I've heard a little bit about it from private sources, but it sucks that there has to be drama like that. But
I agree.
At the same time, you need to get it right.
Yeah, you got to get it right, especially in the early stages, right? Otherwise, you're just nobody's going to.
People lose interest and you lose credibility and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I get it. Like they're not releasing it now. I'm sure they have good reason for it. Maybe they're still working on some stuff. Maybe they want to. I don't understand all this stuff about programming an algorithm to analyze this data, but this is basically what the Vase Scan project is working on, like a program that does all of the alignment and everything in order to show the proportionality and the symmetry of these objects. If there's flaws in that programming, then your analysis of each object is flawed, and then other people are going to find it and say, like, you're a bunch of fools. So you got to get it right. Like,
yeah.
It's weird to me that these guys published on this already, but then they're like still not releasing the data, because, like, as far as like why, if you're already confident enough to publish,
it is a little bit different, right? Because the 2022 paper is just the pyramid, and the pyramid's above ground, so you can come at it from all angles of 360 degree. Well, whatever angles you've got above the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whereas this, it's underground, so you've only got a 180 view from above, or slightly more with how the satellite works.
Yeah.
So it is a little bit different. I mean, it's the same theory behind it, right? But it is a little bit different. And,
for sure.
I mean, personally, I can understand if you've been working on this for years and you come out with you produce these incredible results. Peer review could take 2 or 3 years, and you might not even get it published after all that.
Yeah.
And when you could just come out and release it to the public. And I know there's a lot of crying and whinging from scientists about leading by media rather than publication, like Lee Berger with the Homo naledi stuff. And that was a major concern by people like Mark Boslow with the Younger Dry stuff, because there was a press conference first before at the AGU summit before they released the paper. So I mean, I can understand aspects of that from both sides. It's quite difficult.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I I have to sympathize as well. Like uh, we've talked about the peer review process and a lot of problems with it. So it's understandable that people would bypass that and just say screw it. Like here's the data and just give the open forum.
Yeah.
However, because it's not complete with all the methodology and the algorithm and all the stuff for people to analyze, that's what makes it a little bit like, why didn't you share everything? So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And I mean,
It is
having
interesting.
recently been through the peer review process myself and having seen how it works from the inside, it's fucking disgusting. It really is disgusting.
Well, we definitely need
It's
to
a
talk about
completely
that.
broken system.
Yeah.
Uh,
I've been hearing various scientists say this for a while, and I think they're right. I agree with you,
Yeah.
and I definitely want to talk about it. But I do think it's interesting that they did choose to publish the Khufu paper, but then
Yeah.
with this new data, so they've already established their process. They, at least in the journal, they've published a paper using their process, published the data of the process in in a standard paper, got it through peer review, which must have been a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
But then they scan Khafre, and what is it that the findings are so revolutionary that they're just like, fuck it, we're not even going to try. This won't get accepted.
I think a major point on this is that the 2022 paper, they used it as a proof of concept to confirm internal structure that we already know about, right? And that's very different to proposing deep structures that we don't know about and actively disagree with, right? So,
But there is a bunch of, at least in their graphics, if I'm understanding it correctly, there's a bunch of, they show a bunch of chambers and structures in the Khufu pyramid that are unknown as well.
like
so
the
they
extra
were,
relieving chambers and stuff like that.
yeah.
I think their graphics guy is getting a little too carried away.
Yeah, the graphics guy's like, man, this looks really fucking cool.
He's just like, this is the guy that's drawing spiral staircases. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, you look at their, you look at the Khufu pictures, and it's an elaborate system of chambers and passageways that are definitely unknown. But you're right; those also are only within the pyramid. They're not showing stuff deep underground. So maybe there's less of an argument because people are saying, well, you can scan it from all four sides and not just from the top.
Yeah. And they're dealing with known structures rather than completely unknown. So obviously, like you say, they're saying there's more structures in there that we know about than we know about.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're finding that with other methods anyway. And the Muon scan project, that those structures also show up in there. Those voids show up in there. So more or less. So that would have been good for the peer reviewers to look at and say, well, hey, there might be something to this, because I don't know when the Muon scan results came out, whether it was before that or after that, but
2022, I think it was before that.
I think it was before.
Yeah.
It seems
2020 something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when we were there in 2022, like they were I think they had already moved.
Yeah, they were doing the second scan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is part of what made it feel to me like a little bit too on the nose, was that like the Scan Pyramids project was sort of publicized from the beginning, and a little bit of results, and then there would be some time, and then they would release more results, and it was like, okay, see this little fuzzy spot right here, like that's possibly a void, and then like once they basically essentially confirm the existence of one of the voids that they find, which gives confidence to the large void that's above the Grand Gallery, then bam, we get this elaborate 3D render of just all these detailed passageways and all this stuff, and I'm just like, nope. I'm just like, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Understandable.
Yeah, that's maybe that's too. I'm being too skeptical right off the bat without really looking into it, because when I learned about the actual methodology for the radar data and the Doppler and the seismic all combined into this, that is brilliant. That actually is really cool. So
yeah, if it's legitimate, it's world changing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. So, anything else you want to say about it? Any other comments?
Well, I've heard whispers that the 3D renderings weren't even done by the people, the scientists who developed the method.
I can totally believe that.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously they appear in the 2022 paper. Whoever did those is the same person who's doing the ones for this. So I don't know how much weight I'd give to that, but it seems that the scientists themselves are distancing themselves a little bit from the 3D renderings. And
yeah, perhaps they have a big team and there are people on the team that are doing stuff that the scientists themselves who don't actually have total control over. That's believable.
And that's common in any sort of big undertaking, like publishing peer-reviewed science. When there's half a dozen authors or a dozen authors, some of them won't agree with everything that the other author says, but they still contributed to the paper, so their name appears on it. So
unless they make a big fuss, right, to get their name off of it. Yeah.
You have that paper? Can you pull this picture up?
Yeah. Let me. Russ wants me to pull up.
Yeah.
The this is the paper
This is the 2022 paper. Yeah. Real quick. It's above all that.
Let me just share it first.
Okay.
Be prepared to see the tunnel of death. Wait, is this? No, this is not it. Entire screen.
Yeah, that'll be tunnel of death.
Tunnel of death.
There it is.
All right. This one?
I think it's above that. Figure 22, way up above that. The first time they show the. Keep going.
Yeah, that's interesting.
There it is.
Yeah. Yeah, so that picture. So you see there's a lot more in that than what we know about. way more. All of the gray stuff is totally unknown.
Oh, okay.
All of those black
these shafts
and the yellow circle around the king's chamber. I'm sorry, not circle. The yellow rectangle with and then there's little green boxes that are connected. This is all unknown stuff, all of it, and they talk about it pretty extensively. The known stuff are the little bitty, what Kyle's pointing to there.
This is the known stuff.
Little
right
bitty
here.
black lines below all of that green, and so there's a whole lot of unknown.
That's the grotto right there.
Structures.
There's the grotto.
Yeah.
This is the ascending passageway.
Ascending passage.
This is the entrance in the descending passageway.
Yeah.
This is the shaft, the
well
shaft going through the grotto.
To the grotto.
This is the subterranean chamber and the little
That's
tunnel at the back.
Passage. Now, see, this is what I thought was interesting. Like, what the hell is that for?
What? This?
Yeah.
Well, this exists.
It
but
does.
We don't know what the hell it's for.
I was thinking like, well, maybe they were trying to connect some of this other unknown stuff, but it doesn't even go towards any of the things that they have in their map.
Grand Gallery starts here.
Yeah, there's the Grand Gallery.
There's the Queen's Chamber and Queen's Chamber
the passage
shaft.
to the Queen's Chamber. Yeah.
So they're showing something connecting right here. This is really interesting right here.
Then the red cube below the Queen's Chamber, that entire blue passageway that goes off to another chamber back there. All of those black connectors from the orange passageways that go out to the gray stuff, all of that is completely unknown.
What is this?
I think they're trying to say that some of that is just internal structure, but those are definitely chambers, those big gray rectangles.
This is insane.
And then the only bedrock stuff are these structures out in front.
These here.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and I guess
Yeah,
maybe
they have to be underground.
yeah, that's underground because it's below the base of the pyramid. But this is a lot of unknown stuff in this scan. A lot.
Interesting.
Yeah. So they did come
Sure.
out with a scan with a hell of a lot of unknown structures, just not very deep in the ground. Now,
Yeah, I mean,
obviously,
that's a
this
good
is
point.
again, this is maybe this is the 3D modeler guy who doesn't quite align with their, but I mean that all of it's labeled and they describe all of these numbers in the paper
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
read through. So
One
I
interesting
find this
point
very interesting.
that I saw in a video shortly after this whole thing came out. It was Matt Simpson's video, and I believe he was pointing to like a little uh shaft, the beginning of a little shaft down. It could have been down in the grotto even. There's like a little
Mhm.
start of a vertical shaft there. It's like a couple of feet across, I
Uh-huh.
reckon, but it's full of sand. And so he was speculating that that could be. I mean, I didn't watch the video in detail. I think he's against the whole idea of it being there, but he was pointing to that as a potential connection to whatever they found under there.
Hmm. Well, in the old maps of the grotto, they do show that there was a deep pit. The pit is now filled.
Yeah, that's
Um,
probably what he was talking about.
yeah, yeah. The old maps you can find show that there's the entrance of the grotto here, and then it went way down and then back up
Mm,
like this. But it's been filled in with material so that there's just a bubble next to the entrance, and there was a granite block here. Now that is also full. The granite block is under rubble. But
mm,
yes, the old maps do show that it used to be that it had
interesting.
some kind of shaft going down, maybe a couple of
Yep, I
meters.
remember there was 2
Yeah,
levels to the
yeah,
grotto.
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, we were about halfway through. And then our mics cut out for some reason. I have no idea why, and I still don't.
Classic Snake Bros Studio, zero mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For once, it was not our guest's fault. It was our fault. But basically, we were at the end of that discussion. We were going to move on. We wanted to talk about the Sun et al.
Yeah.
The Sun et al. Paper.
Yeah, the Sun et al. Sun et al. 2020
Yes.
in the journal Science Advances, which is under the umbrella of Science AAS journals. Yeah, so Sun et al. Published. It's called Geochemical Volcanic Origin for Younger Dryas Geochemical Anomalies.
Now, this was the paper that was produced based on the data from Hall's Cave,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
We talked about
Hall's
this a
Cave.
lot back
Yeah.
at the
Yep.
time
Yep.
when Randall had originally brought up Hall's Cave to us, and we were like, what? It's in Kerrville. And so we actually did talk about this a lot.
We
And
got really close to actually being able to visit it, and
Yep.
then COVID.
Russ was communicating with Dr. Stafford,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is really interesting. I've been talking with you recently just on Telegram, and yeah, you're like, we should talk about this. And I'm like, so yeah, this is kind of interesting full circle. So please elaborate. What was the original paper? What were they what was their point, their main focus on that paper?
So they looked at Hall's Cave and they claim to have identified 5 volcanic episodes either side of the Younger Dryas, and they were claiming the paper focuses on osmium ratios. Osmium's a good signature of a volcanic impact on certain isotopic ratios. So it exists in ET material. It's a good indicator of an extraterrestrial impact, but it also comes up in volcanic eruptions because it's a siderophile element. So in the early stages of the Earth, it joined up with iron and got all sucked down to the core.
Mm.
So when you see it in high concentrations in the crust, you know that one of two things has happened. It's either an impact event that's put it there, or it's been brought up in a volcanic event. And so the ratio of osmium, let's see, 187 osmium and 188 osmium is different between both sources. So by analyzing the isotopic ratio of the osmium, you can see whether it was volcanic or from an impact, basically. And
Okay.
so initially when the paper came out, it was pretty quickly picked up that some of their methods were very questionable. And so let's just do this.
When I remember when we were first talking about this, that my thought that it was that volcanic events could definitely be a byproduct of an impact. So
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
presence of volcanic activity at the Younger Dryas boundary isn't proof that that's what caused it, right?
Yeah,
That could be almost a secondary effect to the impact itself.
exactly. Yeah. And so when it came out, Martin
Oh,
Sweatman made a really good review video about it.
I'm not seeing
Um,
your. Are you trying to share screen?
just a sec. There we go. That should be working
There we
now.
go. Now
There
we're
it
seeing
goes.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So initially, some of the issues that Martin Sweatman pointed out, very rightfully so, is that if we look in the red column here, we see HC15, HC16, HC17. So
Mm-hmm.
what this means is they came back to the site 3 years in a row to take samples. And then they combined all of those samples into the same data set, right? And in a normal situation, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But here's the problem. You see the Young and Dryas boundary base here. It undulates, goes up and
Yeah.
down.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the measurements at Hall's Cave are based off of this central datum over here. So if I take a sample along this yellow line, all of those samples are going to be from the same depth. But as you can see, they're not sampling the same layer. And the Young and Dryas
Yes.
layers, this black line here, this sample here at 151 didn't capture it at all. While this
Yep.
sample here at 151, just the tiny corner of it captured the Young and Dryas. And so that
What?
in itself, sorry, go on.
No, I just that it's surprising to me that that would be that would have been overlooked if they were specifically targeting the Younger Dryas boundary layer. Why would they
Yeah,
not? Why would they base it off of like one position in the corner where they had measured?
yeah. And so
Or like you
all
said,
of the Comet Research Group studies on the Younger Dryas, they use the stratigraphy. This is the black line there is their 0 point, and whatever they collect samples from, it's -1 or +1 from the
in
zero.
reference to the Younger Dryas boundary
Yes,
layer at that
from the
spot where they took the
transition.
sample.
Yes, yes. And so it would be okay if, because obviously one sample, one sample year they'd be going up and down straight, and so if they'd only used 1 year's worth of samples in this chart, it'd be okay. But because they combine them all, they've mixed and matched the actual stratigraphy
Oh, I see.
and claimed it's a continuous section.
I see. So after the fact, like samples were collected
Yep.
based on this datum point, this
Yep.
one measurement
Yep.
through multiple years, and they just, because one of them was in the Younger Dryas boundary layer, they grabbed all of those from the same measurement off of that one datum point and
Yep.
said, "Oh, this is
Yep.
all data from the Younger Dryas boundary." I
Yep.
see.
Exactly.
So that was a
They
mistake in analyzing the data after the fact, not in the sample taking itself.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Precisely. So it's a major flaw in their methodology. But another problem here is we can see in the yellow here, we've got 131, 133, 135, 137, 139, 140. it's all consistent 1 to 2 centimeter gap throughout the whole section, right?
Yep.
Until we get down to here, we've got a 4 centimeter jump from 151 to 155. And this is exactly where 151 is where they claim their Younger Dryas layer is. So I found this quite odd. And so Dr. Stafford, the guy who you were talking to about coming out to the cave, he was originally a co-author on this paper. And he reached out to Martin Sweatman and provided him all of the original data from the start throughout the whole process, all of the copies of all the different draft stages and everything. And it revealed something quite shocking. So here is a study from 2009 that the Comet Research Group did with Dr. Stafford. And here we can see the red clays from 151 to 153, and immediately preceding the lithological contact, contain all of the impact proxies: nanodiamonds, aciniform soot, magnetic spherules, carbon spherules. So here we have precedent that the layer at 153 contains the impact proxies.
And they skipped it.
And obviously you can say, well, based on the undulating nature of the layer, that doesn't necessarily mean that in their one, the Younger Dryas was at 153. But there is precedent here that shows the Younger Dryas is at 153 at some point in the cave.
Right.
But here's the kicker, right? So here's the original data set. This is their Younger Dryas layer here in orange, 151. And so they found a volcanic eruption in one of the samples. And so that was enough for them to claim that the Younger Dryas was volcanic. But do you see anything interesting here?
Maybe, enlighten us, please.
Here. So in the 153 layer, this is the sample that they deleted, 153.
Yeah.
And in this yellow here, we have a massive spike of platinum.
Oh, platinum. Yep.
Yeah,
the largest in the whole layer, the largest in the whole cave by a magnitude of 2, and more than almost 20 times background. And this is the sample they chose to delete from the manuscript before they submitted it. So obviously we know that the Younger Dryas boundary is characterized by a massive platinum spike. It's been replicated all over the world. And so in order for them to claim their Younger Dryas layer occurs at 151, they had to delete this sample. Because if they'd left it in, they couldn't claim that this was their Younger Dryas, because this is clearly the Younger Dryas.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so they deleted this sample before they submitted it to the journal.
So on the one hand, you have the selection of a particular measurement, although the layer, the Younger Dryas boundary is undulating. That could be a mistake in the, like, after the fact of samples taken saying, well, this is where the Younger Dryas is in this spot, and then they just pick it across. But this is purposeful.
Yes.
Like, they had all this data at their fingertips and they chose to not include this sample. So that's like a purposeful deception.
Yes. Yep.
Whereas the other could have been a mistake.
Yes, it could have been. It's outright scientific fraud. In order to claim, if they'd included that sample, it would have invalidated all of their conclusions. Let's just put it that way. They couldn't have claimed what they claimed if they didn't delete that. And only by deleting that were they able to claim what they claimed.
Can you register as a peer to review stuff? Can you be a peer reviewer?
I mean, I'm sure there are ways you can contact a journal and say, hey, I'm interested in reviewing this stuff. But usually the journal will approach you if you're an expert in the field and you're well known. They'll approach you and say, hey, can you review this for us? So theoretically I could, but it's not really how it works generally. So I actually replotted the data using only the 2016 sampling episode. And just trying to reshare this. And so here, if they'd just kept stuck to the 2016 sampling, that's all they had to do. And it would have been fine. Like you can see here, the expected chronology, right? So here's the Younger Dryas layer at 153 with the big platinum, and then directly below it is a volcanic eruption, which you'd expect.
So the red ones are volcanic.
Yeah, because the Larcher Sea eruption happened like 150 years before the Younger Dryas onset. So this is likely picking up the Larcher Sea eruption.
And that's the name of the eruption. What is it?
Yeah,
what's the name
Larcher
of the
Sea.
Larcher Sea?
It's a big volcanic explosion that happened in Germany and released a lot of sulfur into the atmosphere. And it was long thought by some people that the Larcher Sea was what caused the eruption, the Younger Dryas cooling, because there's a lot of sulfur in it, obviously, and we know that sulfur reflects the sunlight, redirects the sunlight away from Earth and causes a cooling effect. So it was a good candidate for a while, but most recently with the latest radiocarbon calibrations, we know for a fact that it happened at least 150 years before the Younger Dryas onset. So it can't be linked.
There's too much lag.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and it wouldn't explain the platinum spike, like the
the platinum spike afterwards.
The platinum spike is
yeah. Yep.
Wow.
And so here we have the Larcher Sea, and then the onset of the Younger Dryas that correlates with the big platinum spike here. But what I thought was interesting is that up here, this is the Holocene transition, the Younger Dryas Holocene transition here, and we have another large platinum spike there.
Platinum spike, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's about half the size of this one, but as we know, the transition out of the Younger Dryas into the Holocene was probably more violent, temperature-wise at least, than the onset of the Younger Dryas. At the onset, the temperatures went down by about 8 degrees Celsius, but at the end, they shot up by about 10 degrees Celsius in as little as a decade. Whereas this took a few decades, this took 1 decade. So it's 1 degree every year, or 10 degrees in 1 year. And there's not been a lot of study done on, in terms of impact at least. I'm sure there's been a lot of study otherwise about what caused the Holocene transition. So yeah, I just found that interesting.
Damn. Yeah.
This is
that's wild.
Draft
and the volcanoes are all around it, but they're not.
Yeah,
not
exactly. So in the Sun et al. Original paper, they claim that there's 5 volcanic eruptions in the area, but this shows there's only 3, and the other 2 that they claimed are duplicated because of their poor sampling method.
So it's because they're in different layers. They think that there's more, like they're seeing a repeat. But
they're picking up the same volcanic eruption in the same layer, but they've jumbled it up.
I gotcha.
So
yeah.
You can see here pretty clearly these 2 here are the same eruption. And these 2 here are the same eruption. And these 2 here are the same eruption.
Oh yeah, and that's in 16 and 15, and then 17 and 16,
and it's
16 and 15. Yeah,
and it's because they're basing it off of that one measurement of depth.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. Exactly.
Echoes again.
Echoes.
Yes. A different type of echo in this case. But
Echoes in the data.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And you can see here, in their 151, they picked up 435 ppt of platinum. And so that means this 151 sample probably caught the corner of the Younger Dryas boundary.
Yeah.
Whereas the others didn't.
So it's interesting because the first thing you showed us with the sampling error, or the analysis of the sampling type, making an error in analysis like that, you could say, well, this is a mistake. But then when you combine that with the like complete deletion of a
Yes.
entire layer of data, then you
The
start to
most
question,
important
is this
data point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you start wondering, like, is this a mistake? Because there's an obvious, like, this looks like this is fraud. And so this other one might actually be part of the fraud as well.
Yeah.
Man.
And I actually asked multiple AIs. I asked ChatGPT, I asked Grok. I gave them the full context of everything, and I told them what they'd done, and I said, would you consider this fraud? And both of them said outright, this is unmistakably scientific fraud in its purest form.
Yeah. Man.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about you. I know that you you emailed a bunch of people. You've pointed this out. Like, tell us how all of that went.
Yeah. So when I obtained this data, I sent the authors of Sun et al. An email, and I asked them. I played innocent. I pretended I didn't know about it, and I said, "Hey, I've just got some questions about this paper. I noticed that there's a layer, there's a large gap between 151 and 155. Did you collect samples for this layer? Did you were they just unusable? Did they get destroyed somehow?" And they didn't reply for 4 weeks, and so I sent a follow up to try and compel them to reply, basically. And I said, I didn't threaten them by any means, but I said, I basically told them what I knew, and I asked them if they wanted to comment on it, and they replied basically instantly at that point, and they CC'd my academic supervisor in the email to try and get me in trouble, basically. And so
God.
he called me into his office, and I sat there for 2 hours, going through all the drafts with him, pinpointing the exact time the fraud happened, and at the end of it, he was like, "Wow, this is really bad, but you probably shouldn't go public with it."
Mm.
And he wasn't trying. It wasn't malicious. He wasn't trying to cover up or protect these people. He was more so doing it for my protection. Obviously, I was doing the PhD, and so if I were to focus on this, it would be taking focus away from the PhD. And also because I'm a relative junior academic compared to these guys who are all tenured professors at universities in the US, it probably wouldn't end well for me, because my supervisor was well aware of the climate of the science industry. I call it the science industry. Things don't tend to end well for whistleblowers because a lot of money's involved. And so if I make waves, I'm fucking with their money, and that doesn't go well. And he was worried about my future career. So, but the problem was, because I was told to essentially cover it up, internalizing that completely destroyed my mental health. I had to, I mean, I lost all will and interest in the PhD. I had to take a 3-month medical leave, and to try and get my head straight. And when I came back, it still wasn't. So eventually, I fell behind, and I had to withdraw from the PhD because I just wasn't keeping up. So yeah,
Just lost the
Completely lost faith in the whole system.
Lost faith.
Yeah.
Lost the inspiration to keep going.
I'd been working with my supervisor pretty solidly for 4 years at that point, on a variety of projects. So we had a good relationship. I saw him as like a stand-up guy, and I definitely lost a bit of respect for him in that moment as well. I didn't realize it at the time, but yeah, and definitely in the whole scientific process as well, because when you've been working as a scientist for 4 years and you see behind the curtain of science kind of thing, there's a lot of dodgy stuff that goes on. And I'm not casting aspersions on my supervisor at all. Like, he was always rigorous and maintained his integrity, I would say. But a lot of other people, there's a lot of shit that goes on behind closed doors. I mean, especially in archaeology, which isn't a science really. So I saw a lot of things that worried me over the years.
Damn.
Man.
Well, in a way, it's kind of what you signed up for, right? I mean, I know a little bit about your origin story. It's like, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were, I guess you caught some of Randall's lectures and stuff, and it kind of inspired you to just be like, you know what, I'm going to go study this stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, in a way, it's like come full circle. You've
I
learned.
mainly credit the JRE podcast with Randall and Graham as my awakening to all this stuff. But then after that, I got into all of Randall's old classes from 2008 on the Geocosmic Rex channel.
Yeah.
I binge watched all of those, and I'm like, holy crap, I have to go and study this. So I looked up any universities that were teaching archaeology in my city, and I enrolled there, and I never looked back.
That's incredible. I mean, I knew that story in a nutshell, and I just have always thought like that is the coolest freaking thing ever. And actually seeing this, and now that so to finish the story, basically you going back to this particular paper, you have published this. This is now on Graham Hancock's website.
Yeah, so initially I did a little write-up to send to the institutions of the authors involved. I submitted ethics complaints against them, and I also submitted it to Science Advances as an e-letter, which is like their comment forum system. And obviously they didn't. So one of the things they say is in these e-letters, you're not meant to have figures, which is one thing that probably counted against me. I had a few figures in there because it's necessary to explain what they'd done.
Mm.
So that didn't work out for me. But after that, I got in contact with the editor-in-chief of AAS Journals, Holden Thorpe's his name, and also the editor that oversaw Science Advances, Laura Remis, I think her name is. So I contacted them, I sent them my write-up, I sent them the document cache that Stafford sent me that contained all of the various draft stages and would allow anyone who looked into it to pinpoint the exact point at which the fraud occurred. And one interesting thing is that these guys rushed off and submitted the paper to Science Advances before Thomas Stafford had signed off on it.
Mm.
And so after submission, Thomas Stafford wrote to them and said, I want to take my name off of this because this is bullshit, basically.
Wow.
And so he had to submit a special form. I've got the copy of that form and everything. And so they claim to have put an independent investigator to look into it, and they came back and said there's no wrongdoing here. There's no reason to retract this paper. And so I responded with a list of all of the published Young Dryas critics from day one, and I said, can you tell me that your independent investigator does not appear on this list? Because if they do, then they're not independent. And they never responded.
Yeah.
I wonder who that investigator was.
Yeah. I'd almost guarantee they appear on that list.
He's jumping through their hoops, I bet. That's all I'm going to say about the independent investigator.
Yeah.
Ah.
And interestingly, I found this out afterwards, but if you go to Holden Thorpe's Wikipedia page, in 2008, he was embroiled in a scandal at North Carolina University. He was the chancellor there. And it was found that he was overseeing a widespread academic fraud ring involving college athlete admissions. So he was running empty classes where these athletes were apparently attending and getting full marks, but the classes didn't exist.
Holy
And
shit.
there's a whole 100-page report about all the scandal that went on that implicates him pretty strongly. And so it's I just find it funny that a guy with a history of fraud is now covering up blatant scientific fraud in his journals.
Yeah.
My God. So, man, I'd like to think that the new peer review process is in a way like the new media, and what you're doing by publishing independently is part of that process that's going to be developing. It has been. I mean, they're like whistleblowers within the organization versus people just going outside completely and just going public. Like this, in a way, this is a peer review, right? And some people consider it legitimate, but of course, it's not institutionalized, so you can't always trust that some whistleblower or somebody who goes outside the system is legit. But again,
the problem
go
is
ahead.
the whole system revolves around money.
Yeah.
The whole science industry revolves around money, and there's a buttload of money in there. And where there's money like that, there's always going to be corruption. And the more money that's there, the more corruption there is.
There's a lot of money in athletics too. So
bloody oath, yeah. Yeah, when two very money rich industries collide, that's when you find the most corruption.
Yeah.
Yep.
Damn.
And I've experienced myself as a somewhat of a fledgling scientist when I joined the Comet Research Group, and I've been on a few papers with them, and I get a behind the scenes look at all the peer review stuff, and it's utterly shocking, some of the stuff. Like one paper we submitted to scientific reports, one of the reviewers outright didn't even look at the paper. They just said the young dryas impact hypothesis has been extensively debunked. They just linked the Holiday et al. Paper, and they're like, "This is pseudoscience. It should never be published in any journal ever." And they didn't have a single comment about the paper itself. They just tried to kill it outright, basically. And luckily, there's multiple reviewers for each paper that goes out, and we did get a fairer hearing than I thought we would with that one. But it still hasn't been published to this day. It's still caught up in layers and layers of peer review. I think it was rejected at that journal, and then we shipped it to another journal, and they rejected it too. But I think we got it published in it was PLOS 1, I think. Public Library of Science. They seem to be somewhat sympathetic to the younger dry stuff at the moment, which is good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go on.
Well, I was just going to ask you generally about this type of suppression. What do you think? What do you think about the idea or the theories people have that like there's this whole cabal that wants to hide this information from humanity? Is it something that broad?
I don't think there's a secret society meeting around a round table every night and saying, how can we suppress this? But I think you can be involved in a conspiracy without that. I'm not saying that's absolutely what's happening. It could be standalone complex. It could just be people with the same ideas and attitude all contributing to a conspiracy simultaneously without even contacting each other. And obviously in science there is a lot of clickiness, like cliques.
Mm-hmm.
And often a lot of it is who you know rather than what you know. So if you're good friends with the editor of this journal, you can get your papers in there quite easily with little oversight, really. I know that when I was writing the Comprehensive Younger Dryas Guide on Graham Hancock's website, it's like a 50, 60,000 word thesis length article that deep dives into all the different aspects of the Younger Dryas stuff. I don't know if you remember one of the early papers against the Younger Dryas. It was by Jacqueline Gill, and she was talking about how there's no evidence for widespread fires and ecosystem destruction and all this stuff, which is complete bullshit. But she's now the editor of some prestigious journal, and there is a lot of quid pro quos, I would say. Like, if you come out against this hypothesis, if you say the right things, if you do the right work behind the scenes and work against these people, then we'll reward you. And that's exactly what's happened with Holden Thorpe. Because all throughout the investigation about this academic fraud ring, he never revealed who his co-conspirators. And so they never saw justice. And who knows who they were? They could be the very people who gave him this prestigious job at Science magazine.
Jeez. Well, you're making it sound like it's a bigger conspiracy than I was originally thinking, bro.
And so it's possible that it's a complex web of many conspiracies all interfacing with each other. I don't think it's one big conglomerate, one big coherent plan from the top down. But it's certainly far from open and fair. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Do you think that the academic, the academic world itself seems like maybe well, I mean, I know there's corruption in business, and obviously there's corruption in government as well. You know, like we have this idealized sort of merit-based thing, but a lot of it turns out to be who you know or who you meet and how you meet them. And then whether you're able to contact that person and make the right connections and all this kind of stuff. And it's like that with everything. But do you think the academic world is more conducive to that kind of thing than elsewhere? And that's what causes these kind of problems. Because I guess what I'm asking is, are there not enough, like, how do we have more checks and balances? Like, the peer review system is supposed to be checks and balances on science,
which is why it would be the first thing to be corrupted.
To corrupt,
like
exactly.
That's always the case.
Yeah,
it seems like.
And to draw a parallel between the American system, the founding fathers developed that system because they saw it as the least corruptible.
Right.
They have 3 different branches of government that are all accountable to each other.
Right.
And it took 250 years for that to be corrupted, but it still has.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's totally corrupted. And well, I guess what I'm thinking of is, the academic system is old, right? Yeah. It was basically shipped here to the U.S. and imported entirely intact from a very old system of peerage. And this is the whole thing about peer review. This term also means like nobility. Who are your peers?
Yes.
So it goes back to like older sort of European mindsets of nobility and peasants and stuff like that. And it's like your peers are these people that are at your same level in society.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And also the whole concept of tenure, where suddenly you now have job protection and this is I've read about this being said as like, well, it protects the academic from allows him to do like maverick research. But that's not ever what happens. What it actually does is protect people who are protecting the institution.
It does happen sometimes in rare cases, like Robert Schoch.
Robert Schoch, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But but we all know his name because of how rare that is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, mostly what tenure actually seems to do is protect people from merit-based systems, right? And I don't know if this is good or bad, but like it's this idea that you can't judge pure scientific research in the same way that you judge, say, industry advancements or technological advancements. I agree with that. Like pure research often pays off in ways that no one could ever have foreseen, but at the time it's being done, looks like it's a giant waste of money, right? I think this is totally true. And so things like tenure and the academic world is supposed to protect that kind of research, but it also, like you're saying, is very corruptible. And then you these cliques of people built like grow in there and fester, and then they sort of do this protectionism on their own ideas with each other, you know, and it's sort of
And
like, I'll do a favor. Go
they
ahead.
build influence in their little circles, and then they build each other up and up and up. It's
Yeah.
like that with the impact community. So impact science is very new in comparison to most other disciplines. It's only really been a thing since the 50s or the 60s I mean, there was traces of it here and there beforehand, but it only really came into its own in the 50s and 60s with the study of
Yeah.
Barringer Crater, the
Behringer.
Meteor Crater in Arizona.
Yeah.
And so the entire system, or the entire discipline of impact science, is focused on crater forming impacts, because that's what the discipline was
That's
built
what's
on,
kicked it off. Yeah.
and that's what is left for us to look at. And so that's one of the aspects of why airbursts are so looked down on by the impact community, because they don't leave much evidence. We've only ever seen a couple of them, and the people who study them are very, I mean, influential, because obviously the impact community looks at these people and says, well, they're acceptable, we'll take them on board. But also people like Mark Boslow, especially, because he's worked at Sandia Labs and he's run all these simulations and all that, and it's more about who he knows as well. Like he won't hesitate to tell you, oh, did you know I'm friends with Brian May of Queen, because he's an astrophysicist, and all these things. And it's very clicky. Like anytime anyone proposes an airburst, it always gets shot down, unless it's Mark Boslow proposing it, unless he's working on their team. That's the only time it gets really accepted.
Hmm.
And that's one major reason why the Younger Dryas stuff is so controversial. And it goes back to Kluber Napier even. Kluber Napier's toroid hypothesis, all of the planetary defense people like David Morrison back then, he was the head of NASA's project to locate all the NEOs. Because, I mean, even though it's based on objective observations, he was saying back then that it's complete bullshit. And he's kind of, if there were to be a backroom roundtable conspiracy, he would be the leader of that against the airburst stuff, because he staked his career early on saying this is complete bullshit. There's no evidence for Kluber Napier's theories or anything, even though other top impact people like Eugene Shoemaker were on board with it. And so the Younger Dryas coming to light now, the Younger Dryas impact stuff, essentially proves Kluber Napier's theories. And so that's another angle of why they're being suppressed.
There's, I mean, for me, it's always like, if you don't understand, you know, it seems simple, but it's like, if somebody seems to be doing something that looks crazy, it's just because you don't understand their motivations, right? They have some hidden motivation that you're unaware of. They're not doing something crazy most of the time. You know, there's a very reasonable reason why somebody is doing it. And so it's like that stuff you showed us with the paper where they're removing data. You just, you know, like if you're trying to do science, you're like, why would you do this? What was the motivation, right? So there's a motivation there. And so I always wonder, is it people say, oh, well, they've, you know, that this person's career is based on this, or they don't want to lose that, you know, they're supposed to be the authority and they've said this is wrong and they're protecting their authority. And like, those are motivations, but I'm not sure those are strong enough, but of course I've never been in the system.
Yeah.
But when you say money is involved, like this, that's a big motivator, right?
It really seems like in cases like this, where they've deleted data and they've published this paper just to promote a narrative against the Younger Dryas, it really does seem like there is a deeper motivation.
Exactly.
Well, I think a great example is the fact that your advisor recommended you don't go public. Like that's just one of the small things that happens. And maybe he was only looking out for your best interest for your PhD. Like, bro, don't destroy, like wait till you get tenure, then go public, right? Like that's kind of one of the things. So it's little things like that can sort of build up over time. Perhaps like I'm trying to give the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Here.
And well, in his instance, that's true. Like maybe his mentor's motivations were specifically to protect his career, but look what happened. It destroyed his career in that particular field. He had to leave.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So this is what I'm saying is like, I do feel like,
but if you were the type of guy that could have swallowed that and then finished your whole PhD, maybe you would have been the type of guy that never would have gone public. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like that's
yeah. If he can internalize that kind of corruption and still think of himself as a scientist,
yeah, there you go.
Then that's not the kind of person you want in science, right? That
so that's
maybe
what
I'm being too harsh on people. I don't know. I
don't think so. What I'm saying is that it's almost like an accumulation of little things like that are sort of situational. It's not necessarily corruption.
Yeah.
But they build up over time, and that's exactly
death by 1,000 cuts. Yeah.
So,
but the kind of person that rises to the top of a system like that is going to be somebody who will do that kind of fraud. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because if to protect your career and to get ahead, you had to just pretend that shit didn't happen, right? Then that's like an indication of like, well, now I know what it takes to get to the top.
You get in too deep, and then you start putting your name on papers where you knew things were not legit, and then when you get to a certain level, you're like, I can't let that come out, otherwise I'm going to be exposed. And then
then you have a web of blackmail or possible blackmail.
It's like how the Epstein stuff works. It starts off small, and then all of a sudden there's a massive network of blackmail.
Exactly. It becomes career destroying to let even one thing go out of place. And it can be career destroying for a lot of people because the whole house of cards can fall down. Well, but he just gave an example of where somebody was being indicated for fraud, but he'd never let anybody know who the co-conspirators were because he knew they'd protect him.
The system would protect him.
He's just going to get moved to a better job.
Yep.
Yeah, you get fire promoted.
Yeah,
that's like
fire promoted. Exactly. He has resigned and we're firing him and blah blah blah. But then he gets a better job somewhere else. Yeah,
shifted sideways. Parachute.
Yeah, exactly. So,
well, I really think that what you've done here is great, and I hope you push this issue further. And I think that, I'm looking forward to a future where this sort of what we've seen happen in the last 10 years with alternative media, or the new media, as you call it, as people call it, it's like it literally is taking the place. And I think a vast majority of people recognize. They have an ability to recognize BS. Like obviously some people get duped, but it's, I don't know. I see a bright horizon, at least in this idea of peer review, where you have enough scientists with integrity going outside the system and going public. And there's now platforms everywhere where they can be seen by everyone. So maybe the new peer review is exactly what you're engaged in right now.
Yep. And the peer review issue is a rough topic, right? Because obviously one of the new modes of publication is pay for publish for pay. And so open source journals, there is a big tendency, if you're getting paid $2,000 to publish an article, you're probably going to just publish it regardless of how bad it is, right? So that's not good. There is legitimate criticism about that. But there are other alternatives, like the journal that the Comet Research Group launched, Airburst and Cratering Impacts. The Science Open platform allows you to publish, and then it's well, obviously there's a round of peer review before it's published, right? So we send it off to experts in the field who aren't just going to reject it outright, and they say and ask them, hey, is this science supportable? Is this theory possible? Things like that. is the science sound? And if they say yes, then it's published. And after publication, there's still an ongoing peer review process. Anyone can come in and say, hey, I found this issue with this paper, and I don't know the method of updating the paper over time, but another major issue with peer review is that in most journals, the review process is confidential.
Yes, that's what
I was going to bring that up next.
It's like a black box. Yeah,
and I can understand because certain scientists may not want to be negative against their peers who they might be involved with in various different ways, and they don't want to do that. So I understand that, but that's almost like that's pretty dangerous.
Yeah, that's the idealized reasoning.
Yeah,
right. That's what I'm saying. It's like you have this one Go ahead.
A paper can be killed silently in a back room without ever seeing the light of day, and that should never happen.
Yeah,
and without
if a paper is killed, people should see why it was killed.
See why it was killed.
Yeah.
That would really be. I think if a paper, I mean, maybe there's a strategy that you could. I haven't really thought this through, but like, I'm just going to throw it out there.
Let's rebuild the peer review process right now.
I'm already second guessing my initial theory, but if a paper is killed, reveal the names of the peers.
Yeah. And review what they said. There's no reason not to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they stand by what they said,
can it be corrected?
They should be okay with that being out in the public.
Yeah. Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, the pre-publication part, I mean, this could all be out in the open. Like you submit a paper for pre-publication and it's public. And then the reviewers come in and that's all public.
Yeah.
And then when it gets turned down, it's all public and everybody can go back and see the entire process and say, wait a minute, and then you can, in other words, you could stack peer review upon peer review because scientists could later come and look at the entire process and say, this is bullshit.
Or why not just anonymize it? I mean, like maybe this is also dumb. I haven't thought this through, but I'm just coming up with the idea just now. But like, why, if one of the problems is you don't want, if you're a reviewer, you don't want to be the guy that has to be totally negative to somebody who maybe he's your friend and your colleague, and you don't want to trash his paper.
And you trash, bro, your paper sucks.
Yeah, rich dude. But maybe just anonymize it, like publish the peers, the reviewers' reviews anonymously. Like, you know, I know
an even better way to minimize bias in this kind of thing would be to hide the authors' names of the paper.
Yeah, hide the author is great.
Because if a reviewer has an issue with a particular author, they're going to just reject it outright when they see that guy's name on it.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. Wow, that's
probably you're right. You're probably really anonymize the authors, not the reviewers,
not the reviewers, because then it's a blind test.
Yeah, so they don't know who if they want to trash it, they don't
just
know
looking at the data.
Yeah, they better just look at the data.
Yep. Exactly.
But of course they're not. They're going to read the paper, and if they have an agenda, they're going to see, you know, something that goes against their particular narrative in the paper.
But I think that the whole process being public, kind of, you're staking your reputation on your review as well.
Yeah.
And maybe part of that would be like nobody's going to want to review papers. Like that could be an issue.
I know. Yeah, journals have said that too.
And that might be why it's anonymous, because most people who review don't get paid to do it, which is a big
it's supposedly
for a lot of
supposedly
people.
A free
even
service,
though there's been articles that have come out that showed people got paid billions of dollars were paid to reviewers for like COVID papers and stuff like that. So
the other thing that happens,
people get paid in other ways.
The other thing that happens is that reviewers are picked even though they have no expertise in the area that the paper is concerned, like that is concerned in the paper itself.
Yeah,
they have no expertise.
Yeah,
and I know this.
And if you've got a
geologist,
geologist,
because a good friend of mine in the medical field, he has a guy that's constantly like, hey, can you review this paper? He's like, dude, I don't know anything about that process. He's just like, please. And my friend refuses to do it if he has no expertise. But there's people that'll just be like, yeah. They just need a reviewer to sign off on it, basically. So like, there's there's multiple levels of issues involved in this process, and none of it is really well known in the public. So I don't know what the solutions are. What about Eric Weinstein? He's always
been complaining about the review process a long time.
He does, but he also, one of the things that he always goes back to is that like these, researchers and stuff aren't being paid enough. This is part of the corruption. And I feel like that's a little bit, I don't know if giving scientists shit tons of money is the solution. What do you think about that? Like, is there validity to that idea?
It's hard to say because obviously money is a big issue in science. And I think I've read that one of the reasons for that is because some president banned military funding for science at some point. And so now all the science has to come through private corporations or science foundations that are run by government bureaucrats. And
so he might have a point, actually. I mean, he's a smart guy.
Obviously professors get paid a lot of money. If you're a professor, you're starting on 120, 130K a year in Australia at least. And so and obviously it's a very hard job. Like you're constantly buried under emails. You're working with like 5-10 different teams doing this and that and everything.
But that's your personal income. That's not funding for your projects, right?
Yeah.
Like I think he might be talking about. I'm not really sure what he's talking about, but I know he often laments the fact that like we're starving our best and brightest.
I know in the US,
this is part of the reason why they get so corrupt and involved in these institutions, and they take tons of money from corporations because they're not making enough. Is basically what his point is.
I know in the US, any research funding from at least from government bodies, like 20-30% goes straight to the university rather than the actual research. And that's something that Doge is focusing on at the moment. Like there was one guy who posted on Twitter, I think he was from Columbia or Stanford or one of those institutions, and he's like, I just heard that my research has been cancelled and they're bringing back the money, and this is completely unreasonable. It's ruining my career and all this stuff. And then it's like a 30-part thread that this guy posts, and not once does he mention what his research is on. And that's intentional because when you look up what his research is on, it's on bullshit.
Yeah.
So hundreds of millions of dollars is being spent on bullshit science that shouldn't ever be dispersed for this kind of
I definitely have felt like the whole time, Kyle and I've been doing this podcast, and even before, when you start looking into this kind of stuff, especially if it has to do with human origins, recent, like geologically speaking, recent Earth history, there are political tentacles into the science and all this stuff, because what we think about the past affects what we think about the present, right? And when there's certain narratives going around that people want people to believe, well, you don't want like some science showing up that completely makes that narrative totally untenable, right? And so I feel like a lot of this, like we were earlier talking about, like, are there any, back room, like smoke-filled back rooms with guys with cigars deciding how they're going to destroy the science today, or corrupt it or whatever. Yeah. But it doesn't have to be like you're saying, but I do think that there are political narratives that if there is a big conspiracy, it's where the money goes to control the political narrative through science. That's probably where there's an actual thought out conspiracy.
I can totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Especially, like you're saying, recent Earth history.
Yeah, so Young or Dryas, like, why do people hate this so much? Well, if it's like completely counter to a lot of climate science that supports climate change narratives and all that kind of stuff.
Anthropogenic climate change.
Anthropogenic climate change, then You have to just crush it at the very beginning.
Huge, yeah. That is such a
and
huge...
there are billions and billions of dollars that have gone into
Yeah.
that, you know.
Yeah.
So
And the planetary defense guys have an issue with it because, oh, if this thing happened and we don't know about it, then that affects our reliability for predicting when these things are going to happen. And not only that, but if we know these things have happened, it could cause panic. I don't know if they actually believe that or not. I don't really believe that. I haven't seen
really believe
anyone panicking over a Young Dryas event or anything like that.
Yeah. Maybe panic would have been caused 50 years ago, but at this point people are just like, whatever. You know? I mean, I feel like
it's really,
big news comes out and people are just like, I don't care.
It's really interesting to see the evolution of the anti-pseudoscience community, like led by Hoops and Fegans, and Dibble now is the figurehead somehow. That fucking dribbler.
Yeah.
But in the case of these guys, there absolutely is a conspiracy behind the scenes. They're all in some Slack group saying, "Oh, this guy just this. How do you think we can debunk it today?" And all this stuff. And the rhetoric from those guys has steadily ratcheted up to the point now where they're now saying that people believing what they want to believe in regards to our history is going to collapse civilization. It's going to be the end of civilization as we know it if these people are allowed to believe what they want to believe.
My gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
Does he know anything about history? Like, does he know anything about, like, for example, what the Greeks thought? The Greeks, the guys who supposedly started Western civilization?
Clearly not. If he did, he wouldn't be anywhere near as concerned.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, a lot of the stuff that they hate that people believe, like, for example, that there was a lost civilization before some kind of destruction. Like, every other civilization before us believed that. And they built the foundations of our civilization.
But they're all destroyed now.
No, we are them.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
it's funny
I don't know.
Because I made a point on Dan's live stream at the end of last year that all of these guys who claim all these YouTubers are just grifting and making money off of these conspiracy theories, but that's essentially what they're doing. So they by coming out against some of the more reasonable things like the Young Dry stuff, there's a solid foundation to support some of these things, right? And they come out and claim it's a conspiracy theory, but they themselves, Flint Dibble, for example, has a YouTube channel and he's quite successful. He gets quite a lot of views. He's making money off of these conspiracy theories. Like, he's generating these conspiracy theories himself and he's profiting off of them. So they're literally just projecting this onto people like Dan.
Yeah. Yep. And it's like, there's no safer career. I mean, the safest possible career you can have is fighting against the guys who disagree with what everybody thinks. That is the safest career in the world. It's, you know. So yeah, grifting is exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, and it's fair enough. There are a lot of alternative history grifters out there who don't care about the truth. They just care about putting out these narratives and making people believe them. And there is a lot of that. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah, yeah, there is.
In the last few years, some of the stuff it's getting worse and worse every day. Some of the stuff I see on Facebook is like the most batshit insane crap theory that you couldn't even dream it up if you tried. And these people are on there saying, "Oh, this is true," and obviously, I can understand. Like, I started in this alternative lost civilization history, right? That's how I made my start. That's what inspired me to go to university. So, and over the years, I have seen myself become more skeptical, obviously, but also to resent these kind of things, like the most batshit insane fringe views.
Yeah,
that are just boggles my mind. Some of the things I see. And
Yeah.
I don't want to sympathize with Flint Dibble. Like, I don't want to, but sometimes I'm forced to, because I won't say what I was going to say, but
Well,
I feel the same way. I'm sorry to interrupt that. I'm the same way.
If I could press a button and just turn someone's brain off somewhere in the world, I would do that. But
I feel the same way. I've like started out in, thinking of all these. I mean, basically what I would think now, I'm like, hell no, that's not what happened. But I think the difference is when we talk about it, or when we did talk about it, it was speculative. We still love to speculate. Love to speculate. And I think nowadays, like, I'm a way more hesitant to really say with confidence some idea or theory, whereas in the past it was a little more loose. We weren't, but as we dove into these topics, we also dove into the science, because we're like looking at the science to say, well, how can we refute this? And we learn more about the scientific method, and the scientific method itself is so great. It's like, man, this is what a fantastic way to do things. So learning more about the scientific method makes me more skeptical about my own ideas going forward. So I'm like,
yeah, we had long conversations about like falsification, like it has to be falsifiable in some way for you to be able to, if it's not,
to really engage in
then
it,
it's just, yeah.
To discuss it.
If you can't point to something and say, if we find out this is true, then that means this whole idea is wrong, then it's not, it's basically the whole idea is just, it's pure speculation and it's not scientific. Yeah.
And that's how it's meant to be, right? And
exactly.
Everyone evolves that way over time. Even Graham's evolved like that over time. And and the thing with that is, all these critics come out and say, well, he used to support this and now he doesn't, so he's obviously just a grifter. And no, that's not how it fucking works. You learn things, you become more educated, you change your position. That's the whole fucking point.
That's the whole point of science. Yeah.
And then on the other side of the coin, you've got people who are following you from the start who haven't had that same trajectory, who are like, oh, well, Kyle and Russ have sold out to the establishment because they you know what I mean?
Now we're waiting to reveal things.
Yeah.
We're waiting to reveal data before peer review. It's like, damn it, what are we doing? My God.
Yeah.
Don't worry, folks. The peer review is going to be in this really obscure science called metrology. No one cares. It's not politicized.
How do we measure things?
Relax.
Yeah.
Yep.
There are smart people who know what they're doing. I'm just, but yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I mean, no doubt. This is part of the reason why it's kind of like, if you look at it in that historical lens, this data that just came out, the SAR data, this would have been something I can imagine us being like, wow, jumping all over. And instead we started out like totally skeptical. Well, wait, there's big problems here. We're looking at it. But I think it's healthy skepticism.
Yeah.
Of course, it's our skepticism. So,
but I have to say, like, the same. I mentioned the Klaus Dona thing. Like, when he came out with that, and this is before we started the podcast. I was like, dude, I don't know about this. I mean, it sounds cool, but I can't just believe that you have you got a friend with a helicopter with secret technology that can look through the planet. I'm sorry, it's like I do think that, like, on the one hand, speculating wildly is fun.
Yes.
But once you get, for example, if you come up against a chance to actually do some science, then you want it to be scientific.
Yeah.
That's what's happened to us, right? So when we're going to these places and we're getting out in the field and we're like, okay, we have these ideas about a lost civilization, or possibly the Younger Dryas interrupted some progression of a human civilization that and there's fragments of it left around. How can we investigate that scientifically in a sound and solid way, right? That's what happens.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it fun. So first you start out reading all the books and you're like, holy crap, they had spaceships and blah, blah, blah. But then you go out there and you're like, well, wait, how do I actually find out? Because what I'm interested in is what really happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Not proving to myself that some wild idea I had is true.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
It's like it's about I guess what we want is like, let's find out what's going on, not let's confirm something we already thought. You know what I mean?
Yep.
There's
a big difference.
Yeah, there is a big difference. And but you can't get to the scientific part without the wild speculation at the beginning. That's where it starts. You have some wild speculation, then you start refining the idea, then you get some data and you refine it more, and then eventually you end up with something testable that you can take out into the field and test it, right?
Yeah.
And it may not include spaceships.
Yeah, but then you just fudge the numbers a little bit, right? You take
Right.
samples in the wrong place.
Get rid
and
of
you
some
just
data.
Publish. You just publish.
Exactly.
Get your buddies to be like, hell yeah, bro. Theory confirmed.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well,
I think it's I'm just like, I have to say, bro, I'm impressed with what you've done.
yep.
From when I first heard about you to now. Like, I didn't realize you had these latest developments with your academic career, and also this I guess the letter that you wrote, and it's on Graham Hancock's website. We'll put the links in the show notes. You guys should read this. And I hope to see more on that subject in the future. What else are you doing? I mean, what are your plans?
Yeah, what are your plans for the future now?
I mean, the big plans, bro. We're going to discover the real meaning of the Taj Tepeler civilization together.
That would be nice. So I've just gotten a new job, which has set me up pretty well. I won't say what it is because I don't want critics and all that calling them and saying, "Hey, do you know this guy's online talking on podcasts?" So I just don't want to deal with that.
No problem.
So,
yeah, no, totally understandable.
So for at least a while, I'm going to be settling down doing that. I'm still working with the Comet Research Group on some things. We've got a few papers under review at the moment in various journals. I was going to be investigating, because I'm living on Kangaroo Island in South Australia. It's like a little remote island, the nice quiet country community. And
Awesome.
shortly before it was discovered, like the earliest accounts of the people who found it said there's some evidence to suggest that there was an airburst event that happened here, like maybe a decade before they got here.
Oh wow.
So I've been following up on that a little bit, doing a bit of research here and there. But yeah, I don't know where that'll lead. Obviously,
cool.
I'm going to be talking at the Cosmic Summit in June, assuming that it goes ahead. And so that'll be fun. I'm going to be over in America. Obviously,
You're going to be there in person this time.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Obviously, I've got
Like
my
the first
inheritance from my dad, so I'm going to be doing a bit of traveling over the next few years. I want to go see all the big sites. Hopefully, I can come on a tour with you guys and Ben.
Hell yeah.
Excellent.
That'll be good. So yeah, got a few things on the cards, but just taking it one day at a time at the moment.
All right.
Sounds awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate your time, and let's do this again soon, man. I just, there's always lots of things developing online in the discourse. So I like to hear your takes, especially as this SAR data develops, and maybe we'll get back together and see what you think.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds good. Can't wait.
All right.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.
All right. Check out Marc's article on Graham Hancock's website. It is the reply to Sun et al. Sun et al. 2020. Thanks, Marc.
I wouldn't mind plugging the other two articles I've got in there too.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
One is called Spiritual and Intellectual Colonialism. I wrote it in 2020 for one of my classes at uni. And I've got the Younger Dryas Impact Hypothesis, a guide for the perplexed. And that's that thesis length article I was talking about earlier.
Awesome.
I think they can just look you up by author there and see your articles, right? Yeah. So check out everything he's written on Graham Hancock's art. I've read the other two. They're good. Really good.
Cool.
So,
it's funny. The first one I wrote, the Spiritual and Intellectual Colonialism, more relevant today than even back then. I was a bit juvenile with my writing back then. I would change a few things now, but the core thesis of it is stronger than ever today. So.
Oh, that's cool. I love it when that
Excellent.
happens.
Yeah.
That's great.
All right. Anything else for us? Peru trip. Sign up. It probably is full at this point by the time this comes out, but I'll just say it. Peru 2025 in October, folks. And there will be links to it in the show notes. Also, New York.
Yep, we got the New York events.
Yeah.
Oh man, God, you put me on the spot here. I don't know dates.
No, it's fine. I'll put everything about it in the show notes. Just check it out.
Yeah,
we're gonna be in New York after the Cosmic Summit.
Yeah, talking with the big like cabal of conspirators on the base scanning project.
That's right.
The Artifact Foundation, Adam Young, Karoly Poka.
Yeah. If you want to shout at people for not releasing the data, come to the New York
Go
event.
to the New York event. They'll be there. You can shout at all of them.
The conspirators from the Smoky Back
Russ
Room.
and I will be speaking. Ben will be speaking.
Yep.
And hopefully we'll have Yousef there.
Hopefully. We're still working on the visa. But yeah.
Yeah, it'll just be an evening of lectures, and then we have like a little short museum trip earlier in the day, so you can sign up for that too. We'll be walking through the museum at the Met, looking at some of their ancient Egyptian hardstone vases that they've got in their collection.
Yeah. And if Yousef,
Did I say the Met? Is
Yeah,
that right? That's the Met.
I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah.
Okay.
If Yousef is there, it's going to be great because we'll get to see him seeing artifacts from Egypt that he's never seen before and get his reactions. So we're really trying to get him out there. It's going to be, hopefully we can do it.
Yeah.
That'd be really special to see that, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be great. I think that's it. I know we have Patreons and producers to thank. Should we just do that after?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mark. Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Keep in
All right.
touch.
Yeah,
All right,
we
will
will.
do, buddy.
Cheers.
All right, man. That was amazing.
Yeah. Mark is great.
Wow.
It's crazy that we kind of have been there like for entire like we started talking to him when he was first starting this stuff. You know, we got him on the show and now he's just like fuck all it. Like leaves the academic community.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
So I wish him all the best.
Me
I hope
too.
he I mean that kind of integrity is really, you know, like all the complaining I did in there and you know, and the stuff we talked about conspiracies and backroom deals and like corruption and like, but that's the kind of guy you want as a peer review guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody who's going to look at the science, you know. And hopefully most of I think that many of probably all of the Comet research people are like this as well. They seem to be invested in the science itself.
Mm-hmm.
That the spirit of discovery is what it's about. Whereas so many people seem to be involved in this because of the prestige, because of the position, because of the, you know, social status, you know. But that's everything. I can't like specifically blame the academy and science for having this problem, but it is everything. It sucks because science is not supposed to have this problem. You expect it everywhere else.
It's
right?
like there's this rigorous system to remove all of that personal bullshit, but then of course it happens in the periphery.
Yeah.
And then elevates people that are not dedicated to that protocol.
Yeah. And the problem with that is that people like that tend to elevate other people like them.
Yeah.
Because they're like them.
But this is part of we've watched this exodus. This is why I kept bringing up the new media, because we've watched this exodus in a similar vein of publication.
Yeah.
Right? Where accuracy, honesty, integrity is at stake.
Mm.
And there's been like an exodus of the people who are honest and have integrity, and the remaining have just been losing credibility.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think
you're white pilling.
Me?
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
You were doing it on the show too. You're like, well, I have hope that the future is going to be better.
I do.
I'm like, wow, that's a white pill from Kyle.
Bro.
Yeah.
Come on.
Okay. I'll take the white pill. I'm not sure. We need the black pill now, so I can hand you a black pill sometimes.
Dude, believe me, I'm plenty negative, but I'm more negative in my own lane.
Not negative enough.
In my own lane.
Okay.
Right? Because I'm just looking at like people like us.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, get better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm striving to be better as well. And it's just like, I hate like what he was bringing up, like some of the stuff that you see in the alternative sphere. You're just like, oh my God, it's just.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
the clickbait grifting gets all of the, I mean, it works. If your purpose is to make money, it works, right? Especially on YouTube.
Like you said, there's problems in every arena.
Yeah.
It's not purely on the academic side. But I'm just saying that I'm white pilling it, I guess. That's what it is. I think
hope
that
for the peer review system.
Well, it is a new peer review system, and it's a new, there's new journals coming out, and of course, none of the traditional establishment thinks that they're legit.
Yeah.
But it's not up to them. The data is the data, and over time, it's gonna, like the stuff that's true, as long as it's published and it's available for people in the future who have the ability to go through it and see the truth of it. That's what it's there for. It's very much like the myths or the truth hidden in the myths. It's like it's gonna be published to everyone. Yeah. And eventually somebody will come along who has the ability to see.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I'm looking at it. Maybe it's too idealistic, but
no, I mean, I think it's fine. And you're right. Like it needs I really did like the conversation we had about making the whole thing, making the peer review process public, but have the authors be anonymous.
That's really cool.
So like
idea.
anonymize the authors and actually make the reviewers public. Right. It's the exact reverse of what's happening.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that idea.
Yeah, it's a really good idea. The other thing I didn't bring up during the show, and I mean, we're going to wrap it up here, but
yeah, Jesus
that
Christ.
I thought of was that, I was mentioning like, well, if it has to do with human origins or the start of civilization or recent geological history, then there's this like narrative control. But then I started remembering like the massive war over the impact that killed the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And that's 65 million years ago. There can't possibly be some kind of like, I mean, maybe it has, does have like some kind of existential implication of like, wow, big rocks can hit us from space and cause a massive destruction. But then there was like, we went through this in Path of the Pole with the plate tectonics. There was a gigantic fight over plate tectonics, something that happens so slowly that it doesn't affect anyone ever.
This is why reputations, the idea that reputations are at stake is probably one of the biggest drivers.
Right, reputations and like
pet
theories
and
authorities. Yeah, like so
those are big. But
ego.
I think you're right that there are when you wander into this political sphere, the pressure is even greater. Yeah, because the money is
all that's still there, but then
greater.
You have like more. Yeah, there's incentives besides ego,
the reputation,
and reputation.
Ego, yeah, and you can be elevated in the political sphere.
Yeah. All right, let's thank some producers. It's been so long since we've done this. You guys have all been donating this whole time we've been gone. And
thank you all.
Man, we really appreciate it. So Kyle's got some from the PayPal.
I do. I want to thank Emma. She was on the Egypt trip. She is an executive producer of this show. Thank you so much for the donation, Emma. We really appreciate it. And we have David Lane, who is also executive producer, and a generous donation as well to our good friend and buddy Marty Garza.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, David Lane.
Thanks, man.
And then we have an associate executive producer, Laura Kotu, and she donates every month.
She's a monthly.
Thank you very much, Laura. We really appreciate it. And she also sends me musical instruments from time to time.
Yeah.
I really appreciate
I noticed all the instruments you got hanging on your wall in there now. Like, wow, you're building up quite a collection.
Thank you very much, Laura.
Then on Patreon, as always, I want to thank the people who are at the Master Snake Force Captain and Ascended Snake Force Master levels. So for Master Snake Force Captain, which is the $43.20 level, we have, this is such a pain. This entire website is terrible. We have Martin Rander, Hagen, I don't want to screw this up. Sorry. Hagen Toman, I think. And we have Captain River Rat.
Hey, hey.
We have Chris James.
My bro.
we have David Cortez and Patrick Hicks, the patron saint.
The patron saint.
Thank you guys so much. You are all associate executive producers for this episode. Then, at the Ascended Snake Force Master level, $72 a month, we have Karen. That's a new one, Karen. And
Karen?
we have
Karen Anonymous? I think I know who Karen Anonymous is.
I might know who this is. I'm not sure. Karen P. And then we have Robert Dressel.
Oh, wait, I know who that is.
Okay.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. And we have Philip Baklamov, Matt Shy, Peter Shell, who was another patron saint. Peter Shell has donated so much to us and Randall over the years. And Zachariah Baker, all at the Ascended Snake Force Master level. Thank you guys so much. Also,
really appreciate it.
I want to mention this because I just wanted to mention a couple of things here. God, this website is so terrible. Chris James has donated a total lifetime amount of $1,400 to us.
Wow.
Through his Patreon.
Damn, bro.
Matt Shy has done. Oh no, I just screwed up. I just messed it up. Lost it. Oh my God, I'm sorry.
Well, while you're pulling that back up,
well, I'll just say I can give rough numbers. Matt has donated over 2,000, and Peter Shell has donated almost 4. So thank you guys so much through your continued monthly donations on the Patreon. You know, I wish we had a way to some kind of like they do on No Agenda, knight them or something when they reach out. You guys are definitely. Thank you so
really
much
for
supporting the show. We really appreciate it, and of course, to all of you who listen, you also support it in every way. When you listen to the show, you give us views on YouTube, you give us the numbers on the on Libsyn or any of the podcasting. It all helps, and you tell people, and you get people to listen to our crazy stuff. So thank you guys.
Everything helps.
Yeah.
Also, thanks to Guild Stranger for
Guild
these
Stranger.
fantastic
Donating
beers.
Yeah.
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 Enjoy them every show. Appreciate it, buddy.
We love you guys.
Always have.
Always will.
Good night, Adamu.
Get back to work.